But I'm happy to say that our next guest is already here with us. And if it's okay with her, we're going to go ahead and bring her in early.
Great.
But let's talk a little bit about her before we welcome her.
Hey, Leigh Merryday Porch. What a lovely name.
Right?
Um, and she, in the Scenic Route, Leigh offers insight into how parents of children with autism can redefine hope in a world that often has a narrow view of what hope is. She's an educator and an expert on autism spectrum disorders. She's also the mother of a son who is autistic. Um, she knows the pressure of special needs parenting, uh, the need to overcome the challenges that our children face. Um, but she says we must write our own stories about what is possible for our kids. I love that. And love them just as they are. She has chronicled her family's journey from the shock and uncertainty of a severe autism diagnosis to acceptance and advocacy. Um, and in her beautifully written book, The Scenic Route, she shares the lessons she's learned about charting her own course. So, welcome to the show.
Let's also say, though, that Leigh, before this book, is an amazing blogger. Her blog, Flappiness Is amazing, was one of the first things that I followed. And I said this yesterday. I kind of wanted to be her when I grew up because she just has an interesting way of looking at the world and brings humor and a reality and honesty to everything. She's also a veteran educator and academic coach with a master's in autism spectrum disorders. How amazing is that? She's an advanced certified autism specialist. She provides training in autism awareness for schools, civic organizations, and law enforcement, and has presented at disability related conventions. Her writing has appeared in Chicken Soup for the Soul of Parents Raising Kids on the Spectrum, the Huffington Post, and the Child Mind Institute. And now with this book, she's just tearing it up. Uh, so, Leigh, welcome back to Autism Live.
Hi, thank you for having me back. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time, and I'm excited that you're here. So,
Yeah, Lee, thanks for adding to that bio, Shannon. I cut it short. I'm glad that
that's
you
okay.
supplemented there. Lee, you're so accomplished. And as Shannon said, you're a very successful blogger. What made you decide to write this book? We heard there's a news story that triggered it.
Yeah, it was the funniest thing. I was up at I guess it wouldn't be funny that I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning, but I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I was reading an article of um, I'll say an autistic self advocate who had the happy news that they had just graduated from college and it was actually a graduate degree. And the individual was interviewed, and at one point she said that it could have gone differently, except that when she was little and doctors told her mom that there was no hope, that her mom said, "Over my dead body." And it was because of her mom that she had all of her success.
Mm.
And that crushed me at 5 o'clock in the morning because I didn't leave any stone unturned either. And talking in complete sentences isn't going to be in the cards for my son. He's not wired that way.
Right.
He's not ever going to be wired that way. And all I could think about was as happy as I am for them, and I have no doubt that her parents championing her and pushing her be her best self. I have no doubt. But she was already wired to be able to do that, and there's
Thank
a
you, Lee.
lot of truth in that.
Thank you, Lee. You are preaching to the choir because I have a son that's wired a certain way. I feel like I left no stone unturned. I did every intervention. And my
Right.
son is who he is, and he is moderately autistic. He's not high functioning. And there are times that I blame myself when I hear these stories, right?
Well, I think that that's the danger is that you have a lot of parents out there who already are terrified. I mean, they think the world's going to end when they hear autism. And then now they think that they have to do these super Herculean efforts to get their child to this point. And it made me think about compasses and about how when we start out in our parenting journeys, I mean, none of us know that we're about to become autism parents. Every parent on the planet, whether you are a parent in some distant country.
Oh, Lee froze on us, right?
Yeah, I was afraid it was me that froze, but hopefully we'll
Yeah.
get her back.
Oh,
We lost you for a second, Lee, but now you're
Maybe
back.
go
oh,
back
okay.
just a little.
Sorry.
That's
All
okay.
right. But whether you are, no matter who you are as a person, as a parent, when you start out on this journey, you jump onto the highway and you believe that your compass is supposed to point north. And what is north? Well, it's not money. It's not your son joining the priesthood. It's not any of those things. For everyone, from the parent that's in the tribe to the CEO to the mom and pop shop, owner, what they want is for their children to be self-sufficient in life. And if you start off your journey and you hear autism and you believe that somewhere out there is a book that's going to tell you how to reach north, what happens when you never get there? What do you say to yourself? And are you so busy loving this hypothetical child who was never born to you? That child never existed. It's a child that maybe you've been spending a lot of time mourning, but that's not the child you were given in life. And the one that you have is probably wonderful in many ways. But that's what I saw was all these books on how to get your child to speak, how to get your child to, all of these things. And there were very few books that were designed for parents of children who are higher needs. And if they are, they tended to be super religious to the point where it's about analyzing why God did this to you. And I find that hurtful for people who are of faith because, God didn't do this to your child. What a terrible thing to say. Um, but either the books are of that bent, not to say that there aren't wonderful faith-based books out there that don't do that, but there are a lot that are, this is God's will for your child sort of thing. Or they are a lot of tears and crying, and they're the kind of books that autistic self-advocates rail against because they don't want to be seen as this dread disease. And you can't it's very hard to tell a parent how to get from where you started, thinking you're heading north, to realizing that self-sufficiency is not your it's not your due north. It's not. It's helping your child be the happiest them that they can be. And you get to be the happiest you can be too. And that's okay. And that was kind of the message that I wanted to send, what's going to happen over this time because you're evolving as well.
And so your unique perspective on it is absolutely amazing. And I think it's refreshing and very needed at this time in our community. I wondered if you would tell us a little bit about the ring that you talk about early in the book.
That is a ring, Love Life, Be Brave. And the story was that I had a friend who had a son born, gosh, just a couple of days before 9/11. And he at first was maybe not even expected to live. He was a CMV baby, and there were all kinds of issues and possible brain calcifications. And she had this trauma in the hospital, and then all of a sudden the country's attacked. So, she had done this trauma plus extreme special needs parenting because her child was on, the verge of life or death at one point. It wasn't whether or not he was going to talk. Um, and I realized that in the time that we had been friends, I hadn't begun to understand what she was going through. I hadn't begun to learn how to reach out and see if I could offer some help. So I contacted her and she took me out to dinner and she taught me the rules of the road, so to speak, and she had this ring that she pulled out that said love life. And the inside it said be brave. And she said, 7 years ago, I found this. And she said it spoke to me, but something told me to buy another one. And I just had a feeling I was going to need to give it to somebody else. And sure enough, there we were. And since then, I've actually gone and bought the same thing. And I sat in the very same spot in the very same Chili's and told another autism mama, what you might be facing and what you might not be facing. But, you know, yeah.
I think there needs to be a line of these rings that you need to put out to go with the book, because we're all gonna want that ring now,
Oh,
right?
yeah, they're wonderful. I mean, I've worn it for years and years, and it's been a great comfort to me. And it goes along with the book
Uh-huh.
because be brave, obviously is important in terms of advocacy and all of that sort of thing. But living life
Yeah,
is the
we
most
miss
important
that.
part, loving it. And
Right.
it reminds me very much of a family member who I talk about in the book, who said her greatest regret was that she spent all of this time doing all this research and classes and everything. And at the end of the day, she realized pretty much how her children were wired. And
Uh-huh.
all the things that she did, they might enhance some of their skills, they might help them to communicate, but they weren't gonna magically get them through law school.
Right.
And she said, "Just love your babies while they're young. Just enjoy being a mama, enjoy them being little." And from the time she told me that, and Callum was 2, I have never forgotten it. That's what I've always tried to do is just, like, be in the moment because of that very good advice from 2 wonderful special
Yeah,
needs
we
mamas.
we often miss their childhoods because we're so busy trying to fix them, right?
I was in mode,
Me
and
too.
I had been a school librarian, so, like,
Right,
my instinct to research was 100 times worse than the
right,
average mom Googling, and that's bad enough.
right.
Um, but yeah, at some point, I had to stop looking for ways to make him not himself, and instead look for ways to help him navigate the world as he is.
Mhm.
And when that acceptance comes, it's a lot better. It's a lot easier on the heart. And
Lee, in the book,
that's
sorry to interrupt you. In the book, you talk about missing your daughter's diagnosis. Can you tell us more about that?
yes, they're only 20 months apart. So she was not even walking when I got pregnant with Callum. And by comparison, her milestones seemed so much more advanced that I didn't worry about it. Um, she was academically ahead of schedule, um, but I had noticed some little things, sensitivity with socks in her shoes, um, wanting to immediately like strip out of her clothes when she got home because she couldn't stand the feeling of them. She ended up getting an ADHD diagnosis, and all these things just like they were lining up. But if you're talking to her and she's busy masking, no one would know. And it wasn't until she was probably about 9 or 10 that I began to say, "Well, that's a little spectrumy," but I never thought anyone would give her a diagnosis. And then things just academically started to get more difficult um, as executive functioning skills became more important in school. And that's when we started to notice a social age discrepancy between her and her peers. It wasn't the academics. And then eventually, when you start getting into the higher level academics, it really does begin to impact that. So it was just prior to the pandemic that I finally got her in to see the right people. And I just had to push hard and get some testing and happened to have a wonderful doctor who said, "I see what you're seeing. You're not crazy." So
A
my
running
daughter
theme,
feels great
because
about it.
a running theme because that's what they said when you finally went to the person who helped you with your son, because you were seeing something and nobody was seeing it, and you had to keep knocking at that door. I want to switch though and talk about, I can't even imagine, Lee, we a lot of us go toe to toe with our school district, or we get close to toe to toe. A lot of people threaten to go to due process. You actually went to due process, but there's another layer to it because it was the school district you worked for.
In
You
a
were their
small
employee.
southern town.
Oh, girl.
Uh, yeah, in a small southern town,
And
and
you
I,
weren't blogging about that. You weren't blogging about that for the first time in the book. And I don't want you to give too much away from it because we want people to get your book. But you talk about it in the book.
I do. I At the time, I just didn't want to try to leverage any small platform that I had in such a way. But it was very traumatic. I'll have to say that outside of the deaths of my father and my stepmother, that was one of the most traumatic things. I mean, you're looking at people who not only had been, some of them had been my teachers, some of them had been my colleagues, um, and we're all sitting around this table, and suddenly I'm on the other side of the table, and it was very different. And I will say that everyone who has ever worked with my son has been wonderful. I've never had a single complaint about anybody who has ever worked directly with him. This was more of a district level services issue, and in the book we talk about how that got resolved and what my advice would be to both districts and parents, because having sat in three different chairs at that IEP table as specialist, as educator, and as parent, I have seen all of those perspectives. And I know the way that the teachers are feeling because they're to a great degree helpless. I know the way the parents are feeling. They're for sure feeling helpless. And I think that there are ways that if we could show a little bit more grace to each other, that we could prevent many of these situations from getting to due process.
If you could go back in time, Lee, what do you wish you could tell yourself about the journey you've been on?
I would tell myself that I would tell myself about that north destination I figured out. That was the part that I didn't have yet. My greatest fear in the world was that he wouldn't speak, and I had that fear because I have autism in my family. I knew that kind of autism. We also have the other um, type that's fewer needs, less help required, but that was my greatest fear. And I think that if I had known that I didn't need to spend so much time being afraid, and instead I needed to get active, that it wasn't speaking that was important, it was communication. Get on communication, communication, communication. And it doesn't matter if they ever speak a spoken word. We need them to be able to communicate. And that part had to get hammered into me. I kept wanting him to talk.
I think that's everybody, right?
Yeah, yeah, it
And
is.
that it's a process. And what I thought was amazing in the book, you talked about the grief that you felt because you yourself recognized in Callum. It's a pretty amazing passage in the book where you recognized and you saw it and knew for sure what it was before anybody else pointed it out, and that when you recognized that you expressed your grief sort of all at once, which I
I
find
did.
fascinatingly, that you said it was just like it just came out, and that you cried so hard that your face didn't, like, for days wasn't the
Yeah,
same.
I had to tell my coworkers and my principal at the time that I had had a shellfish reaction because my
Mm.
face was swollen for 3 days.
Yeah.
And I just, and eventually I don't know if it comes from my father was the type of person, he was a lawyer, you make a plan, you get on it. And I think that was my first reaction the next morning was, okay, wipe all this off. Where do I start calling? What do I start doing? How do I help him? And
But you say in the book that that you cried and cried hard. You expressed that grief for that one moment in time, and then that was it for you.
I
That
never
you
cried about autism again. Never
That's
did.
amazing.
I'm not going to say that I didn't have. I mean, I have definitely been diagnosed with anxiety and depression and other issues, but I had that tendency before my children came along. The added stress of the things that I don't necessarily want to talk about in public in order to preserve my son's dignity. Those things are stressful when you have no help, when there's no respite care, when there are no breaks at all. They are, and it's a good thing that I'm a fairly stable person because we have parents out there who have children like my son born to them every day who maybe they're not so stable and they've got no resources and no help. And then we wonder why really bad things are happening, and it's you know you you have to check yourself. You have to look at your own mental health, or you will absolutely crash. I mean, I know for a fact that the due process case and my father's, passing and all of that kind of stuff was coming so quickly and so hard that that's what caused the Bell's palsy that eventually affected my body. I mean, stress will out itself. It will not stay hidden. And that concept of the oxygen mask really applies. And that's your responsibility. It's not your child's. You have to put that oxygen mask on. And, I've had to learn to do that in various ways. There isn't just one way to do it. Um, but but yeah, I've never cried again.
I love that. I love that you got busy.
Yeah.
Just got busy. Yeah, it's the only thing I know how to, it's the only thing that being busy feels better, doing feels better. I find that there are a lot of parents out there who are constantly saying, "I wish somebody would. They need to. Somebody needs to come." There is no somebody. There is no they. They're not coming.
Yeah.
And if you don't, I mean, if you start, somebody else will join you. They always will. And that's what I found. But too many people are scared to. They think, well, I'm not educated enough. I'm not well spoken enough. Sure, you are. Do you
Yeah.
speak, are you able to speak to other people? Then you can advocate and you can do it in your own way, even if that's just going to your local store and saying, hey, how about getting a Caroline's cart in your store or whatever it is locally, talking to the city and asking them to section off a block during the parade where the horns don't go off. So it's a safe zone. Those are things that anybody can do. You don't have to be a speaker, a teacher, a writer, any of those things. But doing always feels better. And when you make
Yes.
the world a little bit better in some way for your child, you're also going to make it better for other people's.
Right. I often say that everybody has a talent and everybody has a talent they can use to help their child. Some are born researchers, some
Absolutely.
are born networkers, just everybody's got one. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. Leigh, what is next for you and your family?
Well, in addition to deciding to sign a book contract in a pandemic, we also decided to build a house because,
Mm,
the world wasn't stressful enough. But we are in the last days of it. We are putting up sheetrock today, as a matter of fact. We're really excited about it. But this is the house that autism is building. Every single detail of this house has been planned with my children in mind, from the layout to extra features um, to even just the whole concept. And I am looking forward to writing that story because I want people to kind of to see what can happen if you get that opportunity. Not everybody can build a house, I know. But when you get the chance to do it and to think about those things, it may give some people some ideas for ways that they can enhance their own homes.
Will
Right.
you be giving us like a walkthrough, like a video walkthrough on your blog?
I am. I'm gonna do some type of a video walkthrough and pictures. I wasn't sure if I was gonna start writing during the process or just write it all at the end. Um, I, being in the middle of house craziness right now, it hasn't been, quite on the agenda, but that's the next thing. And beyond that, I have some interest in possibly offering some. I don't wanna call it Autism 101 because probably somebody's got that title out there somewhere, but an introductory autism course for friends, family, grandparents, something that they can do online, not have to leave the house, not have to find childcare, for new parents, that kind of thing, from the perspective of someone who can answer the, the educational and the autism specific questions, but also as a parent. And so that's something I'm looking into doing next. I enjoy working with people and especially talking to people who it's new for. They're scared, and I don't want them to be scared.
Amen. So let's talk a little bit because we're running out of time about where can people get the book and how can they access the blog?
Sure. LeighMerrydayPorch.com, all all one word there. It has links to all your favorite book places. It's pretty much available everywhere. There is an audiobook. I got to record it myself a few weeks ago. That was really exciting. So there is that, and the LeighMerridayPorch.com. You can buy the book from there, but my blog is still over on FlappinessIs.com. I am looking to merge them at some point, but I haven't quite gotten there yet.
So, Lee, I'm reading the book right now, and it's just amazing. You've always been a wonderful wordsmith, and the way you just get sucked into the story. The way
Thank you.
you tell the story, it's just amazing, and the whole metaphor of the being on the journey is just so beautiful. But you told me when you had sent the book off to the publisher that there's a part about autism live in it. I have not gotten there yet.
You haven't?
I haven't. So what does it say? Because
It's a
I don't really have a. You told me a little bit about it. I don't really have a
uh-huh.
memory of it.
Sure. It is during that time just prior to my Bell's palsy attack when I had been through the or was going through the due process issue, and I had an elderly mother who had fallen and broken 2 bones, and everything was just at its height. I was moving then too, kind of funny, but I was moving then too, and I started to have some things that were the anxiety was getting to me. I ran a red light. I did all I mean, just kind of crazy things, but you had booked me for a second, visit to Autism Live, and I had a massive panic attack the day before. I just it that anxiety was there and I just couldn't do it, and I canceled at the last minute. I don't even remember what the sorry excuse was that I gave you. I apologized, but when I got to the part about anxiety and the impact on the body, I just had to mention it because it's one of those things I always felt so bad about. I'm generally, pretty reliable and show up on time, but
And
it
I don't.
wasn't but maybe a few after that I woke up one morning and very shortly thereafter couldn't feel my face. So I have about 20% permanent facial paralysis on that side.
Well, I feel terrible. We didn't know what was going on, but people cancel last minute all the time, and it happens. And when you said to me that that had happened, and I said, "Oh my gosh, I hope we weren't. I hope I wasn't miserable about it." I don't recall it, Lee, but I can tell you, we know more than anybody else. Nancy and I know stuff happens,
Right.
and you know this is fun, and I think it's wonderful when we can put out information that other people can learn from, but it's not the be all end all. So I felt bad that you were saying that it sort of hung
Oh,
over you a little bit, that you felt bad that you
oh no.
canceled
I
last
I've
minute.
just I've just always felt a little bit guilty about it, and, I thought, "Well, you know what? This is the perfect chapter to apologize."
Yeah,
Well, there's no need to apologize, and I'm sorry because I don't I don't
You
I
did
don't remember it,
you
and I
never
don't
fussed with me.
remember I don't remember thinking, but I should have checked and said, "Are you okay?" And that doesn't always occur to me either. But I'm sorry that it took up any space on your journey.
Oh, well, thank you,
Because
I
we love
appreciate
you.
it.
I love you.
Oh,
I've always loved you, and I'm loving this book, and I'm excited for you that this is where you're at. And I'm it seems like you're doing quite well, and I'm happy for that.
yeah,
thank you, I appreciate that.
your message is so refreshingly and so needed in our world.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that. I just wanted to bring some I wanted to bring some comfort to someone, and I really hope, honestly, that more educators read it as well,
Mhm.
because I think that there are some lessons in there that maybe they'll take a little bit better from me, being a veteran educator myself, than a parent lecturing them.
Right.
Um, because
Good point.
I know what it feels like to want to lecture them, but yeah, what they're dealing with is tough out there.
Well, a good point, but I'm excited for everybody to read your book. So again, they can get it from any bookseller, but you can go to leemayporch.com and
Yes,
see
and
everything.
there are links to all the major bookstores and, Target and Amazon and all that stuff.
There you go. Amazing. I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to spend time, and you'll have to come back.
Thank you. I would love to come back.
All right, amazing. Thank you so much, and best of luck as you start your new journey in the new house.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Good luck to you. We'll
Absolutely.
be
Uh, when
looking.
I get when I get that piece finished, I'll be sure to send it to y'all.
Okay,
Okay, great.
fantastic. Thank you
All
so
Fantastic.
right.
much, Lee.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for being
ladies.
here. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching Autism Live. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye bye for now.
To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.